Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about the primary structures of the brain and we are going to discuss some of their functions. So the first thing that we want to look at is the cerebrum. So all of this right here is the cerebrum and this is the cerebellum of the brain. Cerebrum and cerebellum. And you also have a left hemisphere and a right hemisphere. In between the two hemispheres, you have this line over here, this separation. This is called the longitudinal fissure. Let's turn it around. As you can see, there are going to be wrinkles on the cerebrum. So the parts of the wrinkle that are bulging out, like this over here, these are called the gyri. And the parts that go in, they dip in, basically like a groove, these are called the sulcus. So gyri, so all of this would be gyri right here, and sulcus right here. Now, there are a few specific sulcuses that you need to know. One of the main ones is going to be the central sulcus. It goes across the brain, kind of like a crown or a headband. So this one over here, this is the central sulcus. And as you could see, it separates the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. Now in front of the central sulcus, you have this gyri over here. This is called the precentral gyri, and this one is called the postcentral gyri. So the postcentral gyri is pretty much in dark purple, and the precentral gyri is basically red. On the precentral gyri, you have the primary motor cortex, so that's more of the function. And on the postcentral gyri, you have the primary somatosensory cortex. Now, everything in front of the central sulcus is the frontal lobe. Frontal lobe is involved with higher thinking. And by the way, that does include the precentral gyri, that is part of the frontal lobe. Behind the central sulcus, as you can see here in purple, is the parietal lobe, and that does include the postcentral gyri. The parietal lobe is also involved with imagination and also a sense of where you are in space. On the side, right here, here's an important sulcus to remember. This is called the lateral sulcus, right here. And the yellow lobe that you see, this yellow area, this is the temporal lobe. And the primary function of the temporal lobe is with hearing and being able to interpret sounds and language. On the back side, you have the occipital lobe, right here in green, basically under the occipital bone. And the occipital lobe is primarily involved with vision and being able to interpret images. There is a sulcus right here called the parieto-occipital sulcus. Now let's look at what the brain would look like if we cut it in half. So if we're looking at one half of the brain, again, you could see the cerebrum right here, the cerebellum, but it was cut in this case. You could see the gyri, the sulcus, the gyri. And we're looking at also some structures over here that we need to know. This one right here is the Corpus Callosum, this white structure. And the primary function of the corpus callosum is to connect the two hemispheres of the brain and allow communication between them. Under the corpus callosum, you have this area over here called the septum pellucidum. Here you have the fornix. And this area over here, the whole area, not a specific structure, this is called the thalamus. Below that is the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is a very important area because it kind of produces a few hormones, but it also instructs the pituitary gland to secrete certain types of hormones. Next, you have the choroid plexus up here. So this purple structure is the choroid plexus. It is a capillary, and it is involved with filtering cerebrospinal fluid. You're going to have some cerebrospinal fluid here inside of the brain and the spinal cord, but also outside of it. And that's important for nourishing the central nervous system and also getting rid of waste. Below the choroid plexus, you have this pink structure here. This is called the pineal body or pineal gland. And this is the structure that is responsible for producing melatonin, which is the neurotransmitter that helps you fall asleep. Now, if you look on the thalamus area, we could see this little structure right here that looks like an egg yolk. This is called the intermediate mass. Now, if we look below the hypothalamus, remember this is all of this area is the hypothalamus. This is the pituitary gland, which sits in the sella turcica of the sphenoid bone, very important gland in the body. Okay, right here you have the pons. It's this bulging structure. This is the medulla oblongata, and then down here you would have the spinal cord. This is the cerebellum right here, and if we cut it in half, we could see that it has these white lines over here, these folds. These are called arbor vitae, which just means the tree of life, and it kind of looks like a tree. So those were some of the basic structures that I wanted to discuss on this video. Thank you.